Зараз у нас буде наступна доповідь, але тут дуже цікаві новини. Я ще не чую.
We are to listen to the next presentation soon, but there are very interesting things. You know Bruce Schneier, very well-known cryptographer and security engineer, and he just published a new blog post, Why are cryptographers denied entry into the US? First, you may have heard, or maybe not, that in March, Ali Shamir, a very well-known guy, right? The same Shamir, whose first letter of the last name is in that RSA abbreviation. S stands for Shamir. So in March, he was denied entry to the United States. He was denied the US visa to where he was going to participate in the RSA conference. He's from Israel. It's logical, right? The author of RSA is not allowed to enter RSA conference. This was a great scandal in March on Twitter, but now Bruce Schneier said that Ross Anderson has also been denied entry. He's a British guy, and he was denied entry to the US, to DC, because he was denied a visa. And lots of comments. The world has been much surprised because, you know, when you're in cryptography, it seems to be dangerous, especially if you want to enter the United States. Ruslan, you will be back? Maybe I'll have to stay here for a while. The matter is, Ruslan spent like 30 hours or something like that flighting 30 hours to come here to NoNameCon to tell us about Ukrainian cryptography, because Ruslan was behind Kalina, that white rod product, and Kupina, the burning bush product, and Ruslan will tell you what was his role and what is the essence of these two things, Kalina and Kupina, those two products. Let's welcome Ruslan. Welcome everybody. This is already Friday evening. Weekend is to start soon. So I hope that it will go better now. Who knows about encryption algorithms developed in Ukraine, and quite a number of those. Great. Basically today I will tell you how it happened that we have got our very own encryption algorithm. I was studying at Kharkiv Radio Electronics University at the IT security department, and then I was working at the Information Technology Institute, and I was part of the team working on creating a new cryptography algorithm. I was one of the many members of that team. This cipher that we developed was later accepted as a national encryption standard in Ukraine. Now I don't work there anymore, like many other members of our team. But, well, why is cryptography standardization needed? That's probably clear, but why developing new algorithms if they already have some algorithms and international standards? Why do we develop our own algorithm? First of all, it's worth noting that the goals of objectives of national encryption algorithms are much different from general encryption algorithms, because general encryption algorithms are usually used to encrypt, to provide short-term protection, short-term protection of information, and it's about huge amounts of information, terabytes of home videos and so on, and usually AES is used there. National encryption algorithms are usually used to protect much smaller amounts of data, but in that said, there are much higher risks related to the relevant information, and it has to be protected for a long time. So why does the state have that motivation to develop its very own encryption algorithms? The key factors include the lack of trust in developers of foreign standards, foreign ciphers. The key reason is that foreign developers may hide some vulnerabilities in that cipher, and later they will have access to encrypted data. If you're skeptical about this, then I suggest that you read, first of all, something published by Edward Snowden, if you haven't read it yet, where he describes this government's attempts to affect standardization authorities in such a way that they would accept algorithms with vulnerabilities which would allow special agencies to get access to the information after that. And also I suggest that you read something published by Neil Perrin, French cryptographer in University, who recently did the research, and he found out that in the Russian cipher, which was recently developed and accepted as a standard called Kuznechik, there was some replacement block part which in theory allows to have a backdoor in that cipher. And the existence of that backdoor has not been proven yet, but the structure of certain transformations in that cipher, which is not described in the specification, has been found, and the same structure was used in other ciphers which really were created with vulnerabilities in mind. So it's quite probable that such scenario is possible. Also, other reasons include bureaucracy and political bias. If you use some foreign cipher, we have to prove to justify why the trust in this cipher has to be higher than trust to other ciphers, why this country not others, and it may be conflicting with other political relations between the countries. It may be that some cipher is better in objective terms, but it has been developed in a country which is direct aggressor against the other country, and so on and so forth. But there are also some more positive factors in that motivation, and those include development of national cryptography, national science, national research, when there is a competition to develop algorithms, and it's easier for researchers to get funding for their projects. They start developing their own algorithms, publish their results, analyze algorithms developed by colleagues, and so on, and the research goes forward. There is some progress. So, what about the principle, don't roll your own crypto? That principle is often applied without any context, but it usually is about companies and organizations whose key goal is not creation of cryptographic algorithm, and they have limited access to cryptography experts, or they don't have such access at all. Usually governments do have access to cryptographers, if there is any cryptographer, and when cryptographic algorithms are developed by experts, they are not developed from scratch. They are based on existing research and best practices, so instead of inventing wheel from scratch, they improve something, and they are building on top of some existing foundation. So as a result of all those factors, there are many countries having their very own cryptographic algorithms. That's normal, and recently Ukraine joined that group of countries, and usually each and every country has their own approach towards cryptographic standards. Some countries open global competition, like USA did with advanced encryption standard, and they accepted tenders from the whole world. In Ukraine it was a domestic competition where only Ukrainian citizens could participate. Some countries don't run competition at all, and instead they use their domestic agencies to develop ciphers without any publicity, and then they publish the final results. They just tell everybody that we have it, or they don't publish at all. They leave them as secret and use them to protect state secrets. So there is a question: if Ukraine recently introduced that cryptographic standard, what was Ukraine using before that? Which ciphers were used to protect our data? Before creating Ukrainian own cipher, Ukraine was using Magma cipher from Soviet times, Soviet standard 846. It was much better than American DES, but it had a number of problems. First of all, it was just 64 bit, and with current computing power, this algorithm is quite vulnerable. Also, that standard was incomplete. That cipher standard was lacking description of certain transformations. as a result, there were some incompatible implementations of that cipher. Also, first of all, that initially that cipher was secret, and only after that it was unclassified. So there were some ideas that it was actually developed much earlier, and its aim is to develop Ukraine's state secrets. That said, people who used to work for governmental institutions back then state that when the cipher was unclassified, before the specification was completely known, there was a period of time when Ukraine could not generate its own certificates, its own keys, and they were generated in Russia and sent to Ukraine. I was a child back then playing toys, so I cannot say anything for sure, but you know, this is a paradoxical situation, and there was a very good understanding of how paradoxical it was. So in 2006, the State Service for Special Communications and Information Protection in Ukraine announced an open competition of cryptographic algorithms in order to recommend the cipher to become a national standard, and they accepted proposals at depth 126 at Yandex.ru. And based on the recent presentation about FRD, situation with security has not changed much in the recent years, but during that competition requirements were announced for all candidates for prospective standard, and among interesting requirements there was this. There was some non-standard 512-bit size of that block, and in 2012 it was considered quite unreasonable, because it was considered that the key and encryption block above 256 bits, as it was considered, does not add any practical security, like our cipher is secure, and it would be even more secure, but when you increase that block it affects performance a lot. But over time, with the development of threats related to quantum computing, this block size becomes sort of reasonable. Another requirement I would like to mention, also for our American colleagues, the government requests that the ciphers should not have any backdoors, which is completely against recent requirements by the government of the US and some other countries. So when those requirements were announced and competition was announced, people started developing ciphers, and the algorithms on which our team was working was codenamed Kalina, White Rod in Ukrainian. Since this cipher was created for governmental needs, in performance versus strength balance, we decided to emphasize the strength. So the algorithm was based on GAL, which is mathematically proven cryptographic strength, and it was proven with time. Also with requirements over the key size, 512 bits, we decided to optimize the algorithm for 64-bit architectures, because this was the only way to get the adequate performance. And still, we did not expect that this cipher would be used in limited devices like embedded and so on. So as a result, we got something like this. I will not comment on this slide. That's what my professor liked saying with this sort of slides. But this is the mathematical record of how this encryption procedure works. But this cipher looks like this. It's quite similar to Rindahl, but almost every transformation has been changed and improved using the recent research results to improve cryptographic strength against known attacks. Also, we completely changed the scheme of creating keys, so we simplified it to avoid separate functions for deployment of keys. Also, knowing that in real life to create a crypto system you usually need at least two components, block cipher and hash, we developed and offered Kupina, a hash function based on a standard compression function by Merkle-Damgård, And as a one-sided function, we used that Kalina cipher. And to answer immediately your botanic question, yes, these algorithms were named based on plants which are well known in Ukraine. So these two algorithms became our offer for that cryptographic contest, that competition. There have been 5 offers, including ours. So it doesn't seem to be a lot, but if you compare it, if you compare this result with, for example, advanced encryption standard competition run in the USA, and it was run globally, on a global scale, they got 15 offers. So, you know, for a competition which was announced in Ukraine and was domestic only, I believe that 5 offers is not a bad result. Pretty much every algorithm had some specific feature which was very much distinguishing from others, but I think that we emphasized proper things because after the assessment, Kalina algorithm was recommended to become a national standard in Ukraine. Seems to be it, but you know, we just had to make it into the standard and to publish it. But in fact, this process took a bit longer than expected. It took several years, because in Ukrainian realities, if you have a long-term project, sometimes it's difficult to implement it between 2 revolutions. And we didn't manage either, because in 2013, 2014, people had other problems other than cryptography. Nothing was developed in terms of standard. Nothing was continued in terms of standard development. But finally, the State Special Communications Service announced 2 new standards, 7624 for Kalina block cipher and 7564, which described that hash function. I don't know how they selected those numbers, so that it's difficult to remember which standard is which. So where you can get those standards? We have, it's great to have a state standard, a national standard, but those regulations are disseminated by this organization, the state enterprise called Ukrainian Research and Training Center for Standardization, Certification and Quality. I can tell you something about that institution. Well, first of all, there has been some progress by now. Previously, in order to receive that standard, you would have to sign some paper to send it by mail, and in several months you would have that standard printed out. Now you can do it online, but to do it you have to register on their website. You have to indicate your email, your password, your address, and as an option you can put your tax ID there, but you know, you better don't do it because they don't have a TLS certificate, so use some identity generator, that would be better. Also, after registration, you got an email back from them which confirms your registration, and it sends password in plain text, but that's not important because anybody can send you a password. Luckily, when you have to pay to them, they redirect you to LinkPay payment provider, which is better. Also, the next thing, to make it easier for engineers to implement algorithms according to those standards, of course we wanted to include some test vectors there. It would be nice when you develop something, it would be nice to be able to assess not only initial and final values, but also in the course of debugging some interim values to see where the deviation starts. We provided all of these things, but we printed it in such a way that it's printed in one column. So instead of 40 or 50 pages, the standard has 270 pages now, and you have to pay for that standard per page. So now as a result, that standard costs 3,000 hryvnias. So even if you decide to pay 3,000 hryvnias, roughly $100 for that Ukrainian standard, you better back up that file when you download it, because you can only download it 5 times officially. Okay, but let's go on. The cipher itself is just one of the components to that strong crypto system. For it to be strong and reliable, the cipher has to be used properly in proper configuration. These are modes of operation of that cipher. And for competition, only 5 modes were needed, but they are old modes, and they only guarantee confidentiality of data. that's not enough for modern applications. They also need integrity control, authenticity control, and so on. So we included 5 additional modes that provide for those things. Why is it important to choose proper modes of operation, modes of use for that cipher? Let's look at the easiest mode, simple replacement. When we just take a message, we split it into blocks, sized as the size of the cipher, and we size it and we encrypt it block by block. So what do we get, and why we should not do it that way? The first thing you should remember about this mode: never use it. Why? Because this is ECB penguin. You know, this is the best illustration of how bad that mode is. You probably saw it in Wikipedia and somewhere else. But as you know, there are no penguins in Ukraine, so better we would use something more usual, some bird more usual for Ukraine. So you see, there is a big goose. What is the problem here? On the left side you see that goose, on the right side you see encrypted goose, but even without that initial message you can still see and restore some contents of that picture, that goose. Do you know why it happens this way? Raise your hand. Yeah, not many people. Okay, let's try and describe it briefly. It mostly happens because of 2 reasons. First of all, each and every message, if it's the same, it would be encrypted into the same encrypted text. So if you have something with a white background and we split it into blocks and we encrypt them, we'll get the same result from each time. Also, those session blocks are not related to each other in any way. As a result, again, those blocks can repeat, and after encryption we see some patterns which can be seen irrespective of that encryption. So how can we circumvent it? We need to use some more sophisticated modes. One of those is cipher block chaining. In that mode, you also provide confidentiality, but full confidentiality. And there is a difference in 2 conceptually important things. First of all, the randomization vectors, which randomize our encryption. Second, there is some relationship between the neighboring blocks of that cipher. So now we don't get into a situation where the same blocks result in the same encrypted text. Now they're all interrelated, and as a result we get a long randomized sequence which doesn't have any patterns inside. But this mode is not perfect either, because you cannot run parallel encryption, and also you have to augment data to the size which would be corresponding to the cipher size, so it may be result in certain attacks. But what happens with our goose? Now our goose is completely private, we cannot find any pattern here related to the initial message. Another mode which is more popular and wider used is so-called counter mode, or CTR, counter mode. It is different in that decryption can be used in parallel ways. It converts that cipher into a sequential cipher, and it allows random access to encrypted data. So if you have 5 gigabytes of encrypted data and we need the last megabyte only, we don't have to decrypt the whole 5 gigs of data to get that last block. It's worth noting that, like with the previous mode, the initialization vector should be unique. And in CBC it should also be random and unpredictable, but in counter mode it should just be unique. You see that in addition to initialization vector, there is also a counter, and in that way neighboring blocks are related to each other, and in that way it can be done in parallel. This is a great mode. There is one exception: it only provides confidentiality.
The next mode is very similar to the previous one, but the only difference is that it does not require initialization vector, and the only thing that he needs is 2 cryptographic keys, one for decryption and the other for so-called tweak, which is used instead of the counter. It can be used for full encryption, where the encryption is on the information media. This mode is more efficient than every other mode. But again, it guarantees the confidentiality only, and if you need, and you usually need, identification and authentication and integrity, you will have to use some other modes, for instance, hash function for integrity, or some combined mode. And the most popular one is GCM, supporting confidentiality, authenticity, and integrity. Only one cryptography key and initialization vector is used. It runs in parallel and is the most efficient in the sense of speed. I'd like to underline that despite the using GCM, similarly to CBC and CTR, you must have an eye on uniqueness of the initialization vector. The fact is that if you use the same key or the same initiation vector, the key gamma can be the same. And at the first glance, it's all right because the entry texts look random, but if you add them by module 2, the key gamma will give 0 after this operation, and we just have 2 messages superimposed. So please provide uniqueness of initialization vector. The last one is keyrep, KW, and there are not so many people who know this mode. It is for cryptography key protection, and why it's necessary to use a separate mode. You see, all previous modes connect the adjacent blocks, and their strength is supported by a large number of the blocks. But the key is usually only one block, like 256 bits, which does not provide for secrecy. That's why we needed a separate mode to protect the keys. When you work at the large company involved in developing key management solution, you will have to use keyrep mode. Now, you know all about the algorithms and the standard. Now to hands-on. There are several implementations. First of all, the alpha implementation for benchmarking and study. It's just for research and it guarantees correctness only. It has not been optimized. Next was offered by Privatbank. It's published on GitHub and it has passed the governmental inspection. However, the license is not there at GitHub, so it's not legitimate to use it. And the third implementation is in Crypto++ open source library, but nobody has audited this implementation option of this cipher. So you can use it under your own risk. The official publications were there. We announced this Kalina block cipher in the International Association for Cryptography Research. There is an article in Radio Technology magazine about the Kupina hash function, and 2 presentations by Professor Roman Olinik. These describe the algorithms and development principles at high level, and you can also spend 3,000 hryvnias and by DSTU, our standard. There are copies, but they should not be distributed, and this is a problem. People also ask me what are the best resources on cryptography, and here you can see the resources listed by sophistication level. The simplest one is Crypto 101, is cryptography for developers, just 100 pages, and it's written in a simplistic language, understandable for everybody involved in software developing. It's the best entry point to cryptography, and again, it's just 100 pages. Next, Serious Cryptography by Jean-Philippe Masson, and we already have a fan club for this book. It's also developer-oriented, and you have to have only computer science knowledge to read it. If you are interested in cryptography and you want to know about it at the developer level, it's the best book for you. Then, Bruce Schneier, Applied Cryptography, but it's not about cryptography. Bruce Schneider's book has been written in 1993, before AES, before SSL, before TLS. I was a boy. So this book by Schneider is not about cryptography. It's about cryptography history, and it doesn't reflect a vast experience gained over the internet. But Schneider has also written another book in 2010, Cryptography Engineering, which is better for your understanding of cryptography and new developments there. The fourth book is my pet book, and I believe that it's the best one in terms of volume to information ratio. It's just 400 pages, and it's about everything about cryptography. The author is Nigel Smart, and the information is delivered in well understandable way. You don't have to have any specialized background to read it. And the last one is for level 80 elves by Bennett and Shoup for the USA universities graduates specializing in applied cryptography. You must be expert in mathematics and computer science. This is rather, a manual, not a book to be read from end to end. Just have a look. Bruce Schneier also knows Kalina cipher. This is it, and I'm ready for your questions. Thank you for the attention. Just wait, Ignat, just wait. I may oppose your opinion about the simplest book. I think that Jean-Philippe's book is simpler and better than Cryptography 141, which has many errors. Well, I said that it was an entry point. But if you want to become an expert, start from the second book. The Cryptography 141 is just an overview, and 100 pages is something that you can read over a weekend. What about Udemy or Coursera or Audacity training courses? Well, Cryptography 1 by Adam Bonnet, and he is preparing Cryptography 2, but is doing it for years already, and it will be based on the 5th book that I listed on my slide. I think what is important is to have hands-on experience in implementation or using cryptography protocols. So I think that Dan Bonnet is the best course, the best training course. If you really want to save time, don't spend it on a training course, on any training course. Just start doing something to try to implement a cryptography protocol, because to do it, you will have to dig deeper. And all errors are related to the fact that people did not dig deep to avoid problems. If you allow me to make a comment, there is an Audacity training course which is very brief and has many exercises. So I think it's for first-hand experience. Ignat, I would like to share a life hack. I don't know if it's possible to take standards of take a Kalina standard from the Supreme Rada site, but it may be possible to download the standard from the official Parliament site. But we're not providing any links. Thank you for your presentation. I have a question on Kalina cipher. The standard that you mentioned describes 10 modes. Usually, the standard describes just a basic mode, and all the rest are supported by separate documents. So what was the goal you pursued by including the rest of the modes into the standard? If there are any changes, the test data won't pass. Well, it depends on the standard. There are standards without any mode, and there are some standards with a description of many modes. We have been hands-on oriented. The modes number is not so big. The only thing that is not included to the standard is 11th one, which is new, but everything else is described in the standard, including the requirements to your approach, what are the requirements on input data and so on. So including all the modes into the standard was on purpose. We aimed at avoiding mistakes in using these algorithms, for instance, avoiding any possibility to use it in UCB modes. We included some modes because it was required during the contest, and some more have been included to accommodate the broadest range of applications like interactive protocols and so on. Again, the main goal to do it this way was to provide instruction for the best use of the cipher. You see why did I ask you? I was involved in Kalina integration into the Bouncy Castle library, and I found out that the test data provided in the standard for some modes did not correspond to the values that I would have used should I implemented the mode on the basis of the library where I integrated this mode. So you see, if we modify the mode and the standard has still the older version, well, okay, but any modification means that it's a completely different mode. So I cannot say whether or not your mode corresponded to one of ours. or where there was a mistake in implementation or in the mode. You see, the standard never prevents you from using alternative modes. It's just describes recommendations for use, for application. If there is a Java implementation, I would add it too. It's very useful. Can you please come back to the slide with mathematics, with math description, equation description of the algorithm? It's very concise. The binary sequence, if I am right, the binary sequence to be used in implementation. Which one? Yes, this is a polynomial equation. As the person who participated in developing this cipher, can you please share the information about the reason why some constants are included into block algorithms? Well, it's about transparency of the standards. This constant is not a random binary sequence. It's a binary representation of the polynomial equation used in NDAS matrix for column transformation. This is a polynomial equation shaped to provide for avalanche effect in column transformation. This polynomial equation is supported by the requirement for dissipation. Then substitution blocks, which have been generated partially randomly, and we used only those having the algebraic order higher than 3 to strengthen the algorithm against the algebraic attacks, because the common opinion is that these attacks are the most efficient. The methodology is described in Alexander Kazimirov's thesis, because he was responsible for selection of the replacement blocks, substitution blocks. It's just from the top of my hand, and we can discuss more off stage. I can also provide you with all the materials that are needed to understand it better. All the constants chosen have some justification, and it's completely transparent. We have no backdoors at all. Thank you. It was cool. My question is about the hash function organization. Why did they choose Merkle number where there is a slang extension attack? You know, I was not related directly to hash function development. It was being done by other people, so I cannot dig deeper in the reasons why this algorithm has been chosen. There are many hash functions based on NDA, MD algorithms, and Chavan, for instance. We have already some attacks already known, but the rationale for justifying this method of head function structure is not known to me. You know, when there was an algorithm contest, SH3 was to use cryptographic spot function. So I expected implementation of spot functions, considering the fact that it has become a standard in 2016. Well, you see, the development has started in 2008 or 2009. When I joined the project, the design was almost complete, so I cannot remember, was SHA-3 there when we were choosing this hash function? I think it did not. I also shown you a slide. We took a very conservative approach with the stress to secrecy. In this case, you don't guarantee that it's also the most secure. There should be a balance between the innovations and some older results, older but well analyzed and well understood. So here we have a trade-off. Can you please estimate prospects of mass transfer, aggressive transfer of the Ukrainian infrastructure to Kalina cipher? First of all, Kalina is required for confidential and state secret information. So we are not going from AES. This transformation, or we are transferring to Kalina, going to Kalina from a very old state standard, 28848. This new cipher is more efficient and faster. With regards of the transformation, well, I don't know how long does it take to implement the new cipher in all governmental bodies. That's not a question to ask me. I know that there are some organizations which are already developing the necessary technology, but I don't know who are their customers. Anyway, it's not a one-day job, and the old GHOST state standard is still valid till 2022. After that, Kalina only should be used, and we'll live and see how it goes on. I would like to make a comment that there is already implementation and commercial library version. There is also software using this library, so it's spreading already. How do you think? Is it a good thing to use SMS as a second authentication factor? No. Please support your opinion. Can you take just 1 minute to support your opinion? Well, let's think about what the authentication factors are. What you know, what you have, and what you are. Two-factor authentication needs using minimum 2 factors. Usually the password which you know and something that you have, either your document like ID or passport or cryptographic key, a token. But SMS is not the second factor. It's something you have which cannot be taken or from you. But SMS may be stolen by the operator or even by the attacker exploiting vulnerabilities of these operators. Here also the attacker can also use social engineering to duplicate your SIM card, and he will get your codes. SMS is better than nothing, but it's no second authentication factor. Thank you. You're welcome anytime. The last question, please. You have started by saying that the state standards stress protection, not the speed. I would like to say that one should not neglect speed, because all governmental VPN communication between public servants will use this algorithm, but the speed will be very low because the algorithms does not provide for encryption, for fast encryption. So my first question is, what would you, as a cryptography expert, suggest? What should we do with the low speed? My second question is about backdoor and a lack of trust. We understand the reason why we don't trust the Western standards, but the advantage are that they are closely looked at by so many eyes for so many years, and it may be the reason for more trust. There are also, what would be your recommendation, your suggestion for the governmental bodies in case where speed is not so valid, but security is? Would you recommend to join the national cipher with some Western ones? With regards to speed, I cannot imagine the traffic volumes which would be comparable with YouTube or some other global service. We are limited by country borders, and our traffic will be much less than international traffic. It's not any guarantee against reaching the speed limit, but 128-bit Kalina is as fast as AES, and if we use 256-bit Kalina, it's slower than AES, but very secure. With regards to AES, it depends on implementation. And let's go to the second question about AES. Actually, Kalina is based on AES. We have higher strength again, known attacks on AES. We know where the algorithm weakest link already, but we are basing on Riendal also. We have incorporated all the Western experience gained in the process of development and application of their standards. We are not ignoring anything that's going on in the West. For instance, there was IDE from Kožedub University based on an absolutely new stochastic operations with a specific mathematics. It's innovative, but I don't know any cipher where it has been implemented. That's why it hasn't been chosen for the standard. It's another thing. The cipher is for confidential business only and state secrets only. It's not required for anything else. We have also a standard similar to AES, which can be used anywhere else. Thank you, Ruslan, and let's finish with that. Thank you.